Farmers and Populism is covered in Chapter 12 of your Orange Book, Section 3. We're talking about Goal 4, Objective 3, Describe Populism and the Financial Difficulties of American Farmers. Our essential question is, what led to the rise of the populist movement and what effect did it have? So the farmers moving out west came into a number of very serious problems. First of all, weather was an issue for farming. The western plains are also known as the Great American Desert, and so weather is a continuous problem. Crop prices also began to fall, and what happens here is farmers would mortgage land in order to buy more land to produce more crops in order to compensate for these failings, and it was just a bad cycle of failure. So because of this, they have increasing debt, and farmers cannot afford to pay for their loans. They can't afford to pay them back. So there's a need for more money and cheaper money. Greenbacks, which are paper money, are issued during the war. After the Civil War, they were taken out of circulation, and they were not backed any longer by gold or silver. So in other words, they were valueless. Farmers who borrowed during wartime had to now pay back these loans in dollars that were actually worth something. So they're paying back nothing with something that is valuable. Additionally, money backed by gold causes deflation, which causes the prices of goods to fall even further, and it makes it harder for farmers to get out of debt. So you can see the cycle that's going on here. For a good explanation of the gold standard, click on this link or go to this link in YouTube and watch the first half. It gets a little more detailed in the second half, but the first half is a good explanation of the gold standard. Farmers' problems are made worse or exacerbated by abuse from the railroads. The railroad companies realize that farmers need railroads as their main source of transportation to ship goods. So the railroads take advantage of farmers by charging excessive prices for shipping, and of course the farmers can't really afford to pay these prices. The companies also use rebates for large customers to encourage the shipping of more goods, but not so much for small farmers. So unfair pricing hurts a small farmer, and basically there's two options for farmers. Long haul, this is typically by boat and is cheaper, more affordable. Short haul, quicker, this is by train and of course more expensive. Other railroad abuses include various kinds of corruption, bribes, swindling investors and taxpayers, cheating on contracts and debt, making secret agreements with middlemen such as grain brokers and merchants, all allowing the railroad to control storage prices and influence the market prices of the goods being shipped. Also, of course, railroads are still being constructed. Some of the companies are collecting construction graft, which is when you charge more than it actually costs to build something and take the extra money for yourself. In addition, we have stock watering, which is manipulating the stock, the prices of stock, and one of the most famous people known for this type of corruption was Jay Gould. He was a railroad magnate who used stock watering to manipulate the price of stock. People like Jay Gould become known as robber barons, and these are American industrial or financial magnates. That means like a bigwig or a leader of a company. And during the 1800s, they become very wealthy by unethical or corrupt means. So they're using things like bribe and stock watering to get ahead. Grafts also. So the federal government enables this by relaxing regulation on corporations, these large corporations. So you have transcontinental corporations that are formed, corporations that go all across the country. And these large corporations are often placed above the law. That means they are not subject to the same laws or penalties that smaller businesses are. So this results in widespread corruption of the financial sector and leads to the impoverishment of the people of the United States, particularly people in the Midwest, rural farmers. And this is kind of an illustration showing that, it has the various people. Everyone is around the farmer who is the sustenance for everyone. You've got the Civil War soldier, you've got the justice system over there on the right, and you've got wealthy business magnates and government over here on the left. And of course, under the farmer, it says, "I feed you all." As a result of many of these problems, the GRANGE movement is formed. This begins as the Patrons of Husbandry, that's the first name, which is founded by Oliver Hudson Kelley. And it was originally a social group where farmers would get together and discuss issues and support one another, gripe and moan about their various problems. And it becomes known as the GRANGE. The GRANGE eventually becomes involved in politics, especially in fighting the railroad companies and the corruption that's going on there. The GRANGE taught its members how to organize and set up a farmers' alliance, so a group of farmers working together, or a cooperative. And they also show members how to sponsor state legislation to regulate the railroads. And eventually, some of the Granger laws get passed in some of the western states. Then this is an effort to regulate railroads. However, the Supreme Court ruled in Wabash versus Illinois that state GRANGE laws were unconstitutional because laws that govern railroads involved interstate commerce and could only be regulated by the federal government. So Wabash versus Illinois and Gibbons versus Ogden are, of course, the precedent cases for interstate commerce. Wabash versus Illinois leads Congress to pass the Interstate Commerce Act. So although state GRANGE laws are unconstitutional, Congress passes a federal law, the Interstate Commerce Act, to help regulate commerce. This is known as ICA, and it oversees interstate commerce issues. Created federal laws that regulate trade and commerce. This includes the railroads, and it says that railroads must post their rates. In other words, the rates can't be variable depending on who they're selling to. Okay, rates have to be consistent and they have to be fair. When we get back, we'll talk about the growth of populism.